Good evening and welcome to tonight's Pleasanton City Council meeting. This is a special meeting and it is February 3rd and we are located in beautiful downtown Pleasanton. Could we please have a roll call vote, for attendance, please?
Yes. Council members Arkin,
Here.
Balch,
Present.
Narum, she's absent for the time being. Testa,
Here.
Mayor Brown,
Here.
thank you.
All right, and Councilmember Narum called me earlier this evening and said she will do her best to attend. There was a family emergency and she will, if at all possible, be in attendance, maybe just a bit late. Okay, so our next item on our agenda is public comment. This is the area of our agenda meeting where the public can call in and speak on items not listed on this agenda. If you want to speak on an item that is on this agenda, then we'll have a time for that a little bit later. So, City Clerk, do we have anybody that would like to speak for items not on the agenda?
We do not have any requests to speak.
Okay, so we will limit items listed on this agenda. Let me ask one more time. Do you have anybody from the public that would like to speak on items that are listed on this agenda?
Yes, I have one speaker card for Jan Batchelor. However, I do not see them in the room at this time.
Okay, we'll check back with you later and see if she's joined us or anyone else would like to speak. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to receive input from the community regarding the boundaries and composition of districts to be established for the city council members' district-based elections pursuant to the election code section 10010 and to provide further direction to the city's demographer on any preferred configurations and changes to the draft maps. I'd like to next turn the meeting over to our city attorney, Dan Sodergren. Dan?
Thanks, Mayor and City Council. Tonight is the third of 4 public hearings the city is having as it transitions from at-large city council elections to district-based city council elections. So tonight, again, we have with us our demographer who has been helping us through this process, Michael Wagaman from Wagaman Strategies. We also have Tom Willis from the law firm of Olson Remcho, who's been helping us as well. So tonight, Michael is going to be walking us through some draft alternative maps. With that, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Good evening, everyone. And I will go ahead and hop straight into PowerPoint since we got lots to look at tonight. And the PowerPoint will be brief because we'll spend most of the time actually looking at those maps. But just to kind of remind folks where we are, as was noted, this is the third hearing, and it's kind of a pivot point because before we were talking about principles, we did redistricting school, and now you're looking at actual plans. And this is your opportunity to kind of look at those and see how some of those ideas we talked about, kind of as general ideas, actually manifest themselves on the map. Before we talked about the fact there wasn't really a need to reach consensus. There were a lot of great ideas thrown out at the last meeting, and some of those fit together and some didn't. And that's why you see a lot of different maps, and some of them are very different from each other. And this is that chance to start narrowing down options and start figuring out what are those architectures that really do work in practice. That doesn't mean you're trying to land on a final plan tonight. You're not needing to select a plan tonight. And in fact, the schedule intends to assume that there will be further refinements before the next hearing. Before I talk about that, the slide does mention sequencing. That's something we really haven't talked about before. Not going to spend a lot of time on this evening because really we'll do that once you select a plan, then you can figure out which districts are going to vote in 2022 and which are going to vote in 2024. The only thing I did want to mention here, though, is the California Voting Rights Act, which is what has caused this whole process, does tend to favor having the district that has the largest share of the protected class, which is in this case Asians, vote in the higher turnout election. So that would be when you look at the statistics on the districts, just keep in the back of your mind, if you see a district that has a particularly high API population, particularly looking at that citizen voting age population, that district will tend to be favored to vote in 2024. But again, that's something we will deal with more once we get to a plan. And as we move along there, again, this is the third hearing, the opportunity to provide additional direction. You're not limited to any of the plans today. So you'll have that opportunity to refine those. And if this calendar does feel quick, it is, and that's not on the council. It's not on Pleasanton. It's the way the law is written, is it requires that once you start this conversion process, it has to be done relatively quickly. These are the criteria we talked about before. I won't go over them again, but for you, as you are looking at plans, we talk about these plans, keep these in the back of your head as a way of thinking about what plans you like and what plans you don't. How they tie to these criteria, because that's what we're working towards. What plans do a better job of working with communities of interest, what plans don't do as well. And I'll note on the plans, if there are some you absolutely hate, I don't take it personally. If you want to ask what was I smoking at the time I drew one of those, it's fine. It's just, this is, trying to see stuff, and some of the stuff will be stuff that you just in practice isn't something you're actually really comfortable with. And that's perfectly fine. Again, remembering that we're going to try to get districts of roughly equal size. That doesn't mean exactly the same. Using those traditional redistricting criteria, making sure we're complying with the Federal Voting Rights Act, and we have to be sure that race is not the predominant factor in the process. We'll have 6 draft plans that were created by myself that we'll go through. In addition, I will commend the city. It is, I will say I was very impressed that you had 7 public plans submitted in a very short window. So that really speaks to your city and their engagement in their government, that we had those come together. I won't present those right out of the gate. If there are any particular plans you do want me to present, please just let me know at the end. And then obviously, if we have any of the members of the public who submitted those, they can speak to those directly. The only part I can't do is I can't speak to their intent. I can only talk about the practicalities of what they did, and particularly relative to prior council direction. The only thing I'll note here is you do have a lot of plans for me. This is on the higher end of how many plans I usually draw. And that's just because, again, there were a lot of great ideas at the last hearing. And so you're going to see how all those came together. And with that, we're going to switch over to the interactive software, which we're now going to actually get to interact with. And the first plan we're going to have is the green plan. And the green plan, I'm sure you probably figured out pretty quick what direction it came from, in that there was a discussion about dividing the city into quadrants. And that's what you see here. You'll notice that quadrants don't fall in downtown. Downtown isn't that kind of middle point, because a little bit more of the population of the city lives in the north than in the south. And so instead, where you see that kind of 4 corners pop up is on the intersection of Valley Avenue and Santa Rita Road. And you see that on the west, that line extends in Valley Road and goes down the Arroyo, which was the word of the day from our last meeting I got to learn about. And you see pop up in some of those lines. And in the south, you can see it extending down into Main Street and then down Sunol Boulevard, and I will mispronounce some street names, and I apologize for that. And in the north, you kind of see it go up and then kind of do a little zigzag through the Hacienda area, and that's trying to respect some of those neighborhood boundaries up there, which was direction. One of the points of discussion at the last meeting is whether both Hacienda and downtown would be kept whole or split. So I'll just, as I go through these, mention how they line up in each plan. And under this plan, both of those areas are split. So they're both divided in to 2 districts. Moving off of the green plan to the blue plan. The blue plan is the plan that started and kind of focused on the idea of using the school enrollment zones. And before I go through and actually show the blue plan a little bit more explicitly, I'll note there wasn't direction on exactly which school enrollment zones to use. So I looked at a couple of options. I'll say the high school zones didn't work as well as I thought they might, because there are 2 high school zones. So I thought maybe they split in half, but the population, at least in those zones, don't divide exactly in half. So one of the high schools has more people in it. And you also have these kind of fuzzy option areas. And then the junior high zones didn't work as well because there are 3 middle schools in your area and 3 doesn't divide into 4 particularly well. So this plan really does focus in on those elementary zones. And I'm going to overlay the blue lines here without coloring them in. And now those lines you might have seen before were like, okay, what were we thinking there? Hopefully make a little bit more sense. And I'll start in the south with District 3, where Valley View is kind of interesting in that it's divided into 2 different non-contiguous parts of the enrollment zone, with Ruby Hill in its own kind of separate from the areas more towards downtown. And so you see District 3 is capturing that Ruby Hill portion of the Valley View enrollment zone, and then takes up the bulk of Vintage Hills, Hearst, and the Hearst enrollment zones. I'll note that these lines don't follow perfectly because census geography just doesn't always follow perfectly to enrollment zones. So that's District 3. Then you see in District 1 that we're keeping, and I'm going to get this wrong, Lydexon and Donlin enrollment zones. It does keep that community of interest that was identified as being west of the 680 and south of up to Bernal all together in that enrollment zone or in that district. You can see the Hacienda area split right along that enrollment zone, with District 2 taking up Fairlands, Moore, and the bulk of Alisal enrollment zones. And District 4 kind of taking up the center of town, taking up the rest of Valley View, Walnut Grove. And then you can see that it's splitting a couple of those enrollment zones. And the reason for that is that those enrollment zones aren't always following your neighborhood boundaries. And there was discussion about trying to follow those neighborhood boundaries. So if you keep in mind where you see these 2 splits, and I switch off the enrollment zones and push in your residential neighborhoods, you'll see we're trying to respect the Del Prado, Birdland, and Pleasant Valley neighborhoods. And that's why those enrollment zones were split there. So that's how we got to, again, putting on the coloring, that blue plan. The purple plan, there was discussion about kind of what were some major boundaries that could be used as district boundaries. 2 streets in particular were identified, being Hop Yard and Stone Ridge. And so the purple plan starts with the idea of using Hop Yard as kind of a major dividing line. And that's what you see here, starting with District 1. You can see that before, where District 1 went into portions of Hacienda and kind of followed them down along the freeway, because you're using Hop Yard as a dividing line, it now is making up this population by going in a little bit further to the east than in the last plan. So you see it following Hop Yard all the way down to Bernal. As a result, you can see then coming down Hop Yard, and you see all of Hacienda, in this case, put into District 2. In District 3, you can see this long line where Bernal is now the dividing line. This was following at least some community testimony about the Ruby Hill, again, not necessarily wanting to go north, but wanting to go to the west side. So I drew that so you could kind of see what that would look like. And basically you end up with a district following along the southern boundary of the city. And and I will note there that that is the exact same boundary that you saw under the blue plan. So those are identical. So you ended up with the same district, but for 2 different reasons. In one, we were doing it for the enrollment zones. And in this case, it was kind of triggered by that initial decision to use Hop Yard as a dividing line. And then you finally see in District 4, you can see in District 4 that it's getting pulled a little bit further north than in some of the earlier plans, because it's, again, some of the areas from District 1 is going a little further east. So that's the purple plan. The red plan starts with the principal idea of, okay, instead of using Hop Yard as our main dividing line, let's look at what happens if we use Stone Ridge as the dividing line. And so you see that entire area along the northern border of the city, all in District 1. And because District 1 is getting pulled to the east, it's getting pulled away from some of that 680 corridor community of interest that was identified, which is why you're not seeing it going as far south. And that's even with not using all the population under Stone Ridge, even excluding that little slice, you still are seeing District 1 getting pulled away from that area. And as a result, what you see then is that District 3, somewhat like earlier plans, is again using Sunol as the dividing line from District 4, but it's getting pulled further north and taking up those areas to the north, kind of bounded by Hopyard, 680, and Stone Ridge. Then you can see, as a result, again, District 4 starting a little bit like some of the earlier plans, like the green plan, though this case, it's not going quite as far north as the green plan. It's not getting up to Jansen Track. So it's just stopping a little bit further, further south. And in previous plans, you've seen the downtown divided, but this is one of the first times we're seeing the downtown divided and drawn not to the east or the west, but to the north. So that is what triggered there. And I forgot to mention in this plan, both a little slice of the Hacienda business is split off, and again, the downtown is split. The orange plan, only 2 more to go, I promise. Just as the red plan was that kind of first example of seeing a portion of downtown drawn to the north, the orange plan, we'd always seen some, most, or all of the Hacienda going to the east. And this plan started with the idea of taking that Hacienda area and drawing it to the west. And so you see all of that Hacienda building plot area kind of moved, or business park moved into District 1. Again, as a result, you see that the bulk of that population to the west of 680 is in one district, but it's not able to get quite as far south because you just end up with too many people in the district. In District 3, again, trying to respect that prior, and I got to use the Arroyo as the dividing line because that made me happy. Just kidding. District 3, you can again see some of those major dividing lines you've seen before with Hopyard, Main Street, except this is the first time you're able to see where District 3 is moving beyond Sunol, moving into some of these areas on the southern border, but not extending all the way over to Ruby Hill. So it's coming over, but not quite as far over as in some of those earlier plans that we looked at before. And then in districts 2 and 3, you can see, or in this area here, you can see basically this line where it's using Valley Hill. And then I'm trying to blank on the other road, Santa Rita. That's kind of trying to follow those neighborhood boundaries and respect as many neighborhoods and keep as many neighborhoods whole as possible, which is why you get this kind of triangular shape there, is trying to follow as many of those neighborhood boundaries as possible. So under this plan, again, explicitly the goal was to keep Hacienda whole and into the district to the west, with the downtown now divided once again between districts 3 and 4. And our final plan is the yellow plan, and the yellow plan's a little bit of a hybrid in that it starts again with kind of that idea of the quadrants. Your city's kind of shaped that way, but is a little less rigidly following that than some of the earlier plans, particularly like that green plan. So you're borrowing more in other places from other directions. So what do I mean by that? So for example, you see a northeastern quadrant district, District 2, but rather than rigidly try to hit that kind of point on Santa Rita and Valley Avenue, looking at that prior direction we talked about the school enrollment zones in that area. And you can see that's the way that Hacienda was divided. There was, again, using those school enrollment zones, kind of like you saw previously. What that means is, by saying it's kind of a hybrid, is that, as you recall, there was that discussion about keeping the area to the west of the 680 all the way to Bernal and keeping that all together. And by the way, this is contiguous. It is contiguous by the freeway, so that is not that is legally compliant there. Again, seen in District 3 here, kind of drawing that southwestern quadrant district like you saw in green, but again, not to treat it so rigidly that you're splitting up that 680 corridor, allowing some flexibility, for example, to keep those communities on the southern border together. And again, seen with District 4, that southeastern quadrant. In this case, it's just picking up because it's not having this area like you see in some of the other plans, it's picking up a larger portion of the downtown and moving just a little further to the north. And under this plan, again, both Hacienda and downtown are split. So you have a mix of plans that act differently in different areas. Some of them, again, may not make you happy at all, and those we can get rid of, and then we can explore which ones are closer. And again, if there are any of the public plans you want me to show, I'm happy to bring them up and describe them. I just can't, again, describe intent of the submitters. And with that, I can stop talking.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I'm going to thank folks that made their maps. It was a complex process trying to balance the backgrounds of the voting population, as well as the quantities and the neighborhoods. It was extremely difficult. So what would you like to do next? Would you like to take questions from the council? Or would you like to have council sort of eliminate some maps? Michael, help me here a little bit. I can also open the public hearing and hear from the public and then take it back to the council. So what would you like the next steps?
So what I'd suggest is first, if there are questions, not feedback, but questions about anything I said so you can understand the plans, or if there are any of those public plans you want me to present, we go through that process. Then I would suggest you take that public comment so you have that thinking of the public, and then at that point, take it back to the council and start providing direction.
That sounds like a plan. All right, that's what we'll do. Okay, Councilmember Testa, do you have any questions for our presenter?
Actually, there were some of the public plans that I thought were worth exploring. So I was going to ask that we take the time to do that. I would specifically like to hear about the Combs plan. I like the CATS plan and TOR 2, if we can do a quick summary of those.
Absolutely. Mayor, did you want to see if there are any other plans, other council members, and I can just whip through them all at the same time?
You bet. We're going to go through the list. Even if they don't raise their hand, I'll still call on them. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Arkin, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, actually, well, one question first. Let me see, Mr. Wagaman, you mentioned in the beginning about the being sensitive, taking notice of the population of protected class. I thought we can't use that as a criteria. And so only if it was kind of a subset of one of the criteria. That was my understanding. Am I incorrect on that?
It's a little complicated, and if council is on there and if they want to correct here. So obviously that the California Voting Rights Act explicitly talks about race and was the triggering for why you're going through this process. Under federal law, when drawing the actual district boundaries, there are some times you explicitly have to look at race. You do not hit those demographic factors here. So race can't be the predominant factor in how you draw these lines. The one place the California Voting Rights Act, and I know it's really hard having the federal in California, but the California Voting Rights Act does come back in, is on that question of sequencing and which district should go. And it's really only talking about where you have that largest population of that protected class, and that you should sequence that in an election that gives them their best opportunity to elect.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That's the only question I had. And about public maps, I think the one I was interested in, and also Councilmember Testa mentioned it, was the Combs plan. I really like that one. So if that one can be included as well, that's my thought. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Balch?
In terms of the public plans, I did look through them, and I agree to see those. I will mention just I don't think I need it presented, but on the Austin plan, I noticed that District 1 and 4 divide along the Centennial Trail Arroyo. So it's just maybe as a thought, but I don't think with the deviation. So I guess maybe I'll ask a point of clarification on that, or we just say we want to see the plans that have already been mentioned. Because one of the questions I'll just ask, one of the questions I have is, what is the deviation we should be concerned with? Like I would assume at some point the deviation is too great and the plan should be rejected.
So a couple of parts to that answer, which is one, that you want the total deviation, so that difference between the biggest district and the smallest district, to be less than 10%. So roughly plus or minus 5. So if you get above that, you start triggering some additional stricter legal review and stricter legal scrutiny from the courts. You may have plans that you don't want to really look at the whole plan, but you saw an element of that plan you liked, and that's great. And that's something we can go through in direction of, hey, by the by, please, as a direction, look at plan X for what it did in this particular area, because I thought that was interesting. So even if you don't want to see the whole plan, don't like the whole plan, if it did one thing really well, that's great direction. And then 3, you may have plans that are not legally compliant, that are outside of those deviations, but again, may have elements that you want to look at. So I'll flag if I have any concerns about legal compliance, but that doesn't mean you just throw it in the garbage.
Okay, and then if I may, one follow-up question. One of the last plans, the Waldron plan, I presume that section of the plan that was white, based on the population, it did add up. So I'm assuming it just was missed, but that obviously would be quadrant 4, district 4. Does that make sense?
I'm just checking the numbers. As I recall, that district did have, and I'm just checking right now, about 1,100 people weren't assigned. So that total population of the city and the districts is off by about that much. I'm pretty sure in that district that the intent was to assign that. If you did assign that, I will tell you it does not throw off the deviation, so it would be legally compliant, but I never want to modify a member of the public's thing. So if you love that plan, you would just want to give that direction of the Waldron plan, amending it to assign those unassigned areas to, in this case, I would presume District 4.
Okay, so then in summary, I will be comfortable with the 3 plans identified previously to present from the public.
All right, thank you. I see that Councilmember Narum joined, but I'm going to go next, just to give her a chance to catch her breath and let the records show that she is in attendance to our meeting. I would like to see the CATS plan as well. In addition to these, I would also like to see the Combs plan at least discussed in more detail. And the TOR plan was the other, let me see, TOR 2. No, I don't think I'm a fan of TOR 2 as much as the others. So I'll stop with just those 2 for my vote anyway. Councilmember Narum, do you want a chance to catch up, or you tell us what you're ready for?
What, I'm sorry, I apologize. What's the question?
Oh, sure. We're going through the maps. So Michael Wagaman has recommended the colored maps. And so in addition to talking about them, we're looking at the maps that were submitted by our residents and trying to pick if any 1, 2, 3 or so should also be considered along with the color labeled maps from Mr. Wagaman.
Okay, are we picking specific color labeled maps?
Not yet. We have not eliminated any colored maps.
Okay, well, I think I heard people express interest in the CATS and the Combs maps, and I would certainly be in agreement with that.
Okay, all right, that sounds great.
Did it for me.
Okay, thank you. We haven't had any members from the public speak yet. So we have a little bit of feedback and we were asking for questions. Kathy, do you have any questions for the demographer?
I don't at this point, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Jocelyn, I'm going to open the public hearing to see if anybody from the public would like
Mayor?
to. Yes, sir.
did you want me to present the plans first, before or after the public comment? The 3 public plans.
Oh, great point. Let's present the 3 public plans that were discussed, and then we'll go to the public.
So the first plan that was discussed was the Combs plan. And the Combs plan in the north has some similarities to what you saw, at least with District 1 in the red plan. So it is kind of using that Stone Ridge as the dividing line, drawing that district along the northern border. One of the big differences there is it goes a little, District 2 goes a little further north than you see in that red plan. And as a result, that's why it's able to pick up this little bit of extra population to the west of 680. So that's kind of what that key decision point there. It's still not able to go all the way down to Bernal, but it is able to draw that that district. And then it's a little bit actually of a hybrid of some things you've seen before, in that there are a lot of similarities between districts 3 and 4 and the yellow plan, in that you're seeing a lot of those areas south of Valley Avenue, kind of coming down Main Street, all being put into that, what I'll call the Southwestern District 3. And it's still coming over past Sunall Boulevard and picking up those areas along the southern border, with District 4 picking up there and going just a little further north again than some of the plans of the demographer drawn plans. Where it's really different is in District 2, in that because it's drawing those 2 districts in that configuration, and that District 1 is that now you get District 2 kind of extending down and basically becoming a district that is the south of Stone Ridge District, extending that in that particular direction. So it is a different configuration, but you can also see in it, and you know, that the public is hearing it and seeing some of the same things the council identified of different ways to configure different portions of the plans. And it is a good example of where, for example, if you really like one plan in one half of the town, but not in the other half, not everything's compatible, but in some places, different plans will be compatible with each other or close enough. The next plan is the CATS plan.
Can I ask a quick
Yes.
question of the demographer, Mayor? Is that a compliant plan? Would you
Yes.
say that is? Okay. Thank you.
There's nothing I see in this plan that wouldn't be legally compliant.
Thank you.
The CATS plan also, there's nothing I saw in the plan that wouldn't be legally compliant. And what you see in the CATS plan, again, it's not a sin that you see some similar things between what you see in some of my plans and some of their plans, is again, you see kind of like in the purple plan where all that hacienda entire area is combined into that District 4. And you see, but you see here, they made a different choice where District 3, instead of coming down and kind of grabbing the communities along 680, as in the purple plan, is actually going further east and going into some of those other neighborhoods that I have to remember, Birdland and Pleasant Valley are being picked up into that district. What you see then is, and this is an interesting thing and a decision point for the council, is District 2, almost like the Combs plan, is coming down, grabbing these communities to the south, but again, working a little further east than in any of the previously viewed plans, without again getting as far east as Ruby Hill. So it's going kind of extending out. And one thing I will note in this area is the census geography is not super in here. So it does limit your options as far as how people put that together. So keeping communities of interest area in whole in this area is a little bit more challenging. And if we look at direction there, we can go into that in a little bit more detail. And again, making that direct decision, take that Ruby Hill and extending it just again a little bit further north than in some of the other plans. And again, using that big dividing line of Santa Rita down to Maine to kind of divide those 3 districts. The other plan which was identified was TOR 2. TOR 2, I will note, does go beyond those generally accepted deviations, in that District 2 is at negative 8.5, and District, District 4 is at negative 8.5, and then District 2 is at plus 5.2. So fundamentally, that means just District 4 would need to add a little bit more than what you see here to get to legal compliance. There are areas where it could expand, but you would want to make that change if this was a plan you wanted to pursue. And this plan is definitely not like any of the plans that you've seen previously, either for myself or the ones you requested to see previously, in that it takes that 680 west of 680 area and it doesn't stop at Bernal and extends all the way south to the city border, and then extends to the east here into that area we've talked about previously, around neighborhoods like Sycamore and Mission Park and Mission Hill area. So it is a different district in that you have that one kind of long district on the eastern border, and then you have three other districts that kind of stack on top of each other with between 2, 3, and 4, with District 2 in some ways looking a little like what you saw in the Combs plan, but actually it's picking up very different people. So it's got that same shape, but where in the other district, it was more of the population south of Stone Ridge. In this case, District 2 is largely picking up that population north of Stone Ridge, just dipping down into kind of the Walnut Glen area. And then you see a kind of a central district that stops just short of the downtown. I think it picks up a little piece of the downtown, at least the development zone. And then the District 4, again, having that configuration that you've seen previously. I will note on the District 4 shape, it looks a little different. The population is actually similar to a lot of the other plans. The difference in the shape is that District 4 is picking up the fairgrounds. So that's why it's extending a little further over. There's not a lot of people other than the horses over there. So that is the tour plan. Again, the tour plan is the one of the three plans identified that would just require some modification in order to reach the point of being ready for adoption. And with that, I can stop talking if there are questions about how I present any of these.
All right, any other questions? Okay, now that you've presented, Councilmember Balch.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Maybe not necessarily of Mr. Wagman, but maybe of Mr. Willis, if I can. And let me know if appropriate now. But one of the premises of the letter that we received to move us to districts was that we were disenfranchising a particular group from possibly having representation. When we look at the demographics now that Mr. Wagman has presented, almost in all the plans, we don't achieve a minority majority district. It appears that we would not be able to, similar to, I think all of the fellow council members and I premise that our community is diverse and spread out. So maybe you could talk to that, and I guess I'll just ask for giggles. The letter still then applies, and the action we're taking still is the course we must follow. If you don't mind elaborating.
Yes, of course. I hope can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the question. So your question is, Michael touched a little bit on this, but basically your question refers back to the California Voting Rights Act. And as you recall, that is the triggering concept that requires a city to move to districts. That does not require to state a claim under the California Voting Rights Act does not require the protected class to show that they can create a majority of citizen voting age population with any particular district. So that is why the California Voting Rights Act is so different than the Federal Voting Rights Act, and why the threshold is so low. So to answer your question, it's really all you have to show in some ways to whether you are subject to the California Voting Rights Act is whether there is racially polarized voting. And inevitably there is. All racially polarized voting means in some respects is that in certain elections, people of different classes or races vote differently. And that's all that means. And so it is a very low threshold. Then the federal voting, so that's just the on and off switch about whether you move to districts. And that is why that threshold is so low. So then the Federal Voting Rights Act says, should you take race into consideration when you are now actually drawing the districts themselves, as opposed to whether you should go to districts or not. And that you are correct, you're absolutely correct. That in order for the Federal Voting Rights Act to come into play, a protected class really should be able to, has to show as a condition that they can, that they are a 50% or plus, that they can create a 50% plus CVAP district in any of these particular districts. And as you correctly point out, none of these, all of these maps are good indication that no protected class meets that threshold. So all that means then is that you, getting back to what Michael said originally, race should not be a predominant factor when you draw the lines. California law requires us to have the CVAP numbers up there on the grid, but really you should not be taking that really into account when you actually draw the lines. And Michael did not do that. He was looking at other factors as he kind of went through that tonight. So does that answer your question about that?
Yeah, and if I might just follow up. So sounds like for federal, we're quite compliant as an entire community. But I know because we've done this a few times with you now, but the bar for this California Voting Rights Act, we are still above the threshold that the letter could carry merit, and proceeding forward as we have outlined and are doing tonight would be the recommended course of action by yourself and our city attorney.
Exactly. Better summary than I did, but that's exactly
No,
right.
no, I need it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Any other questions by council before I open the public hearing? Okay, seeing none. Jocelyn, I'm going to open the public hearing, and if you could please give simple directions on if anybody is calling in or on their computer for a Zoom call, how they might participate. We're going to limit your feedback to 3 minutes. And if you made one of these maps, first of all, thank you very much. Big job, tough job. And yeah, if you have any comments or you've just been watching the meeting and you want to weigh in, we want to hear from you. So do we have anyone who would like to speak?
So members of the public may participate in the Zoom meeting by using the raise your hand function. You will be unmuted when your name is called, and you will be remuted after the allotted time. To raise your hand, click the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone. To unmute your phone, press *6. And our first speaker this evening is Jan Batchelor, followed by Sandy.
Good evening, council and staff. I hope you continue to hear me. I get a message that my internet connection is unstable and I've been tossed off of this program 3 times.
Miss Batchelor, we hear you very well. So
thank you.
It's working
So
now.
I am Jan Batchelor, a longtime resident of downtown Pleasanton and a former business owner on Main Street. Very few of us feel the need for this division of council representation, but it is the prudent action to take. Staff has done a good job of assembling the maps presented by various interested parties. I've reviewed all the maps. While I don't know the reason for different line representations on some of the maps, they are more complicated and confusing than the green map submitted by the consultant the city has engaged for this matter. I believe the green map is the most fair, unbiased way to create districts within Pleasanton. So I'm speaking to endorse the green map, but asking you to consider 2 small tweaks to the green map. The first one is the line running down the middle of Main Street. If you would consider moving it to run down First Street, keeping the business district in one district. The second one is the line running down West Las Positas. While I like that major thoroughfares are always considered, in this case, if you would consider running the line along the arroyo that parallels West Las Positas in consideration of housing on both sides of West Las Positas and keeping that in the same district. So please keep this simple and adopt the green map, and thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. All right, our next speaker.
Sandy, followed by Jared Buna.
Hi, this is Sandy, and I too had a little trouble hearing Michael Wagaman. His voices kept going in and out, so it's a little hard to understand, what he was talking about. I did submit a map also, but it wasn't one listed here. So I guess you want me to submit it again for next time. And so I don't know why that wasn't included. And also I liked the hall map, and you didn't show that. Can you show that on the screen and let us take a look at that one?
Sandy, yes. City Council received the hall map. There we go. There you are.
Okay, and does it show the word hall on it? I mean, it's when he was flipping from different maps, I didn't know which one he was looking at. So, for a while there, he had it up here on the left-hand side.
So you're looking for kind of
Anyway,
a label
I
for what
don't-
it is. Mhm.
Well, when he's flipping from one map to the other map, I didn't know if he was talking about the hall map or he's talking about the Combs map, because it was gone. The caption was gone. So this one does look like the hall map, and oh, I see it. The right-hand side. Whoops, it's gone. It was there on the right-hand side for a minute. Anyway, that's my preference right now, and please explain what you're going to be considering next meeting, or you be considering all of these maps, or again, are we just going to consider the ones that the council has decided on this time? Those are my questions.
Dan, would you please comment or answer her question?
Yeah, Michael can better describe the process for next time and what we'll be looking at as far as draft maps.
So first, to the question about the map, I did not see that plan, so I would recommend resubmitting it so that we can get it digitized and added back in for next time. For next time, everything stays on the menu, so nothing falls off the menu. We're just going to be adding to the menu based on that refined direction. The only suggestion is that you do want to start in your head narrowing down the field, because we are going to try to land on a map on that fourth hearing. So, but if between hearings 3 and 4, you change your minds and want to go back to a different plan, we would keep all of those available to you. And I'll work in the interim during public comment on adding a caption, so when a plan is up, it's on the screen.
That'd be appreciated. So wouldn't we try to eliminate some of these? Now you've got 6 + 6. I mean, you've got quite a few maps. Would it be helpful to say if the group voted and said this just isn't our map, and that we were able to eliminate them?
So usually I would say you just want to identify certain maps that you like, or parts of certain maps that you like, and provide that direction, and we can kind of winnow down that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for calling in. Our next speaker, please.
Jared Buna, followed by Jill Buck.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Welcome to our council meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me first just say, this is a tough position to be in, and I know we've got the right people to make the right decision, and I know you will pick the best map for Pleasanton. You've got the right people guiding you. You've got the right guidance. As a community, the least we can do is help, kind of give you our thoughts, and hopefully that will help you pick the right map, which I know you'll do. So I had a chance. I mean, fascinating topic, drawing lines for representation. It's as old as democracy itself. And so I went back and looked at a whole bunch of court cases in this space, and there are quite a few. The good thing is there's real clear guidance on what to do when you're in this position. And it's a unique position because if you think about it, you're representatives that have to draw lines for the voters who are going to vote you in. So in most cases, you think of democracy as the voters picking the representatives. In this unique scenario, it's the representatives picking the voters. So it's in all of our best interests to really look at those factors and make sure we're taking each of them in consideration. They've been litigated ad nauseum throughout the country at the state and federal level. So we have a lot of guidance. And I think the team you have is really giving you the clear guidance on all of them. The equal population one is very straightforward. The federal law one is very straightforward. You cannot discriminate on race. I think we're all in alignment there. The contiguousness of all the maps. There's a lot of contiguousness in the maps, but it's this one key factor I think we should all be taking into consideration if we decide to go with any map that has odd shapes, and that is the community of interest. There really has to be justification for that odd shape. A community of interest could be that factor you use if there is an odd shape, but I would urge against it because there is a number of cases out there where the community of interest was contested by other parts of the community. So it's a very challenging factor to kind of weigh and analyze, and it can be very challenging to justify later on, especially several years after you're out of office. The understandable boundary is very straightforward, and the compactness is very straightforward. When you consider all those factors, the green map and the purple map, as they're currently constructed, look very clean and very safe from a litigious perspective. So my thinking after looking at all this and talking to many people is the green map and the purple map really give you the support and the justification and applying the principles correctly.
Okay, well, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Jocelyn, our next speaker.
The next speaker is Jill Buck.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in. I really don't want to be parochial, but there are some maps that break up my neighborhood, the Del Prado neighborhood. Not any of the demographers' maps, but some of the resident produced maps do break up my neighborhood. One of the things that I like about the demographers' maps, particularly the green and the purple, is that they seem to be using major roads. I think they're called arterial roads as boundaries, which seems to be similar to the way that our neighborhoods were built. And so it makes a lot of sense to use those major thoroughfares versus residential streets to divide the districts in my mind. One of the things that is kind of immediately appealing to me about the green map is that it's very dispassionate. I mean, it's north, south, east, west, and it looks very clean and easy to understand for residents, whether they've lived here for 50 years or just moved into town. That map seems to be the one that makes the most sense just in looking at it. The problem I have with the Combs and the Katz plans, again, goes back to using some residential streets as district borders. And I feel like that could be very confusing and also a little bit tough to keep some of the neighborhoods together. You know, as I mentioned with the Combs plan in particular, it does divide my neighborhood, Del Prado, into two, and I would consider us a community of interest, but that's the last parochial thing that I'll say. You know, I really hope that you all are able to look at the maps and make choices that you think will be great for Pleasanton. I have every faith that you will, but I would strongly hope that we could stick to one of the demographers' maps. Particularly, like I said, I really like the green and the purple maps the best. They just seem very clean, but green would be my number one if I got the choice. So thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to all of you as you go through this difficult process.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
We have none.
Okay, thank you. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the city council. Michael, what would you like to do at this point? Do we go through the individual maps and discuss each one? We've asked questions, we've heard from the public.
So one thing based on the public comment, I did want to touch on again, just so council has it for your direction, is as a reminder, California law does lay out those criteria and they are in a ranked order. So equal population, federal law, contiguity, respecting neighborhoods and communities of interest, using understandable boundaries, and compactness. And so it's important kind of to remember those as you're thinking about plans, because sometimes it's easy to kind of get in your head and be like, pick a lower ranked criteria and put it above another one. Now, that doesn't mean you're not doing a balancing act. And sometimes things will self-reinforce, right? Those understandable boundaries are what create that community of interest, that big street, which happens to run in directions that create compact districts. Sometimes it won't. So just so you're being clear that you are providing direction based on that ranked criteria. What I would suggest as a potential option, but that you all know how you work best together, is potentially just going back through the council and asking which plans that they want to kind of look at, seeing which ones kind of have consensus around them, and then narrowing down any refinements on those plans for future maps that you want to see.
There's just so many maps. All right. Councilmember Balch, would you like to start?
No, I would not like to start.
I know it's a big job, isn't it? Would you do
well,
me a
maybe-
favor and take a stab at it? Let's try that.
I shall. I wore the right tie for drawing lines. If I may, I'm going to maybe pick up on Mr. Wagman's comment. I think it do us justice to go through all 6 of the demographer prepared maps. I don't know if anyone else has that feeling, but I think we should do that for our public. So I will maybe start and do that. So I guess, do you want me to run through my 6, the 6 with me, and then we go again?
Well, let's go with down the colors of the recommendation for
Okay.
the staff recommendation. And we did have 3 maps that were public drawn maps. The
Yeah, good
CATS
point.
plan, the Combs plan. And I think Tour 2, I didn't list your name down as supporting it. I think it had limited support.
Yeah, okay, so no problem.
Let's pass on that one right now and stick with the 2 plus, yes, the recommended maps.
So okay, so I'll start. I like this map. There's no doubt. The public comments about it make sense to me. It's easy on the eyes, compactness. I also quickly noted that it divides Hacienda only using 2 streets, Hacienda itself and Stone Ridge, which when I looked at the other maps that used either the district boundaries or something else, got a little challenging. The comment from Ms. Batchelor about the Arroyo, maybe that adjusts it slightly. We do have a 7.4 deviation, so maybe that would help between 1 and 2. I'm not sure about stepping up onto First Street, and I only say that because I think of Lions Wayside Park and how Second Street utilizes that park, and how Second Street really walks to Main Street, and how the other side of Main Street walks to Main Street. So if I was to use a dividing line using this map, I think Main Street is it. And maybe, I don't know if the tick's at, I wrote it down, it appears at Abbey, but maybe it should go all the way to Burnell. But I think maybe one person lives there, and I don't know if it really would change it too much. The reality is I wouldn't have expected a map like this to come about from the work. I mean, we said it, but I didn't expect it to work so well on our community, on our major thoroughfares, right? I mean, Valley and Sunol, Santa Rita. And I did see how he broke up Del Prado from, boy, Connie Cox is going to kill me, Val Vista, using the canal, the Arroyo there, right on the east of Hop Yard. So I think it's a very, very good plan for our community. One other thing I'll just mention while I guess I got the floor. Having watched districts move in the future, 10 years from now, I hope we set a precedent to make future councils, none of us which will be here in 10 years, theoretically, do it right, because I feel like they take the current map and then they massage it. And this map is on strong roads and arterials in our community matters. So I like the map. Did I do what you wanted, Mayor?
Yeah, we could go around, since there is 6 of us, see if anybody wants to provide comments on this map. Can we do that? Councilmember Arkin, would you like to weigh in next?
Sure.
Thank you, Jack. Good start.
Okay, sure. Thank you. The green one, I sort of went through all this, and with the criteria, I kind of ranked them myself. This one didn't filter to the very top, but it didn't fall to the bottom either, because I do like the compactness of it. That is one advantage of this one. One of the things that I thought I didn't like about it, the difference, the discrepancy from the district with the highest population, the population equality. I think that was the term Mr. Wyman used. That's probably a better term than how I can explain it. Was a bit much. It was about, and I know it might be all with, it's all within, legal issues, but it was a little more than I would like to see. So that was one downside to this one for me. Let me see. I was thinking there might have been some neighborhoods broken up, but I'm not sure if that was on this one or not. So again, not my top favorite, not my top few anyhow, but not my bottom either. So that's what I would say on green.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Testa, any feedback for a map, green map?
I don't have much more to add than what's been said. It isn't at the top of my list. It's not at the bottom of my list. And really don't need to restate the comments that have already been made.
All right, Councilmember Narum.
Excuse me. I really like this map. I think it just appeals to my engineering, orderly major arterials. But the one comment I would add as I look at this, in area 1 and 2 and 3, that's where a lot of the RENA sites are going to be. And those are the areas that are a little bit low on this. And so I think actually it's in favor of that, knowing where the growth is going to occur. As an example, the Merritt property there, when that would come on, would be a good candidate there for map or area 3, which is a bit light. So that would help balance it closer to even. So I just generally like this. I like the idea of dividing it up by arterials as opposed through neighborhoods. And, you live on one side of the street and you're in one district, and you live across the street and you're in a different. I think this is much easier for residents to understand where they are and keeping neighborhoods together and stuff. So this would probably be my top one of the 6.
Okay, all right, good discussion. It wasn't my top one either. I guess I looked at maybe this is help me out, Michael, with this should not be a characteristic, but District 4 is very large and sprawling. It has lots of very low populated areas. So geographically, and then I look at District 2, which is more compact. Should I not use compactness and expansiveness as a criteria, or should I just let that go? Because we're really looking at the data for population and citizen voting age backgrounds.
So compactness doesn't refer to physical geographic size. So it doesn't say one district's bigger and therefore it's less compact. It's really more of that shape that you're looking at. So these are probably the most compact plans you're looking at because, again, of that regulated shape. The other thing I will note here on compactness under California law, what compactness actually says is that you're not bypassing one population to get to another population. That's the definition in California law. So when you look at, so sometimes districts that look very pretty may not be compact because you're doing that, or a district that may look not that compact may actually be because you're following geography or some other issue. So.
Okay. And I'm going to agree with Councilmember Balch that Nick on Main Street at Sonoma Boulevard and he jumps over, there's no reason not to smooth that out. That's actually about where City Hall is.
This little area.
I see what, yeah, there's like a park there. So not quite sure why that would be carved out separately, but it's not a straight line, but it's a little bit straighter if you follow the main street. And Other than that, not my favorite, but not a bad map either. It's straightforward. Basic and straightforward. Okay. Well, there's a little bit of feedback, and with regards to balance, yeah, District 4 is up 3.6%. And we have District 3 right next to it down 3.7%. It would be nice just to get a little balance if that, but we'll work on that when we get down to a final map design. How about that? Okay, let's go on to blue map. Councilmember Balch, would you like to start again, or would you like to pass the speaking?
I'll start again, but then the next
opportunity?
person's got to do 2 on the round robin.
Got it.
Yeah, so I've noticed he's aligned, I'll say he, Mr. Wagman, but the demographer is aligned to the Pleasanton Canal on 1 to 2 on the, boy, I need your mouse. It's on the, right there by 680. Yes, thank you. So that's good on the, for me on the east side of Hop Yard, but on the west side of Hop Yard, I find, oh, is there a way to zoom in a little bit? Because you don't see the city streets there, Mr. Wagman. I don't particularly, yeah, that's maybe just a little southeast, if you don't mind. Maybe a little, perfect. That's great. So I really don't enjoy the sports park being disconnected from Wood Thrush. So Mr. Wagman, that's Wood Thrush is north, or Birdland is north of Valley, south of the line right on the border there. And so for me, this is a hard part about this map, especially also the gates being split like they are, especially just because we went through as a council the whole Centennial Park conversation, and they were talking about how this community of the Gates and Birdland is all connected with the sports park. I mean, we have several connections of Birdland into the sports park. So I have a challenge with that, and I have a challenge with the little, I think I got to think of a different adjective, the little topper of District 4 into, yes, right there where he's demonstrating, right at the back end of sports park. Now that I understand that the split of Hacienda is along the enrollment zones, I understand how the line came about, but I just don't feel it's as elegant as following either Hacienda, Stone Ridge, Owens, or something else like that. So I'm not particularly fond of the split at Hacienda. And I'm definitely not very excited about the split between 4 and 2 along Stanley. And it's not following a railroad track. I think that's actually following the Arroyo again. I'm not quite sure there right there. I apologize, you're moving faster than my, yeah. So this is a little awkward, right? It's following the back of the property lines. I guess that is the Arroyo right there. I had some concerns with that. So to summarize, we're splitting up the gates. We're disconnecting the gates from the sports field. I don't like the school enrollment zone split between of Hacienda, and I don't particularly like the split between 4 and 2 around Stanley as shown on currently right now. That's where I'm at. Not one of my top maps.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Arkin.
Okay, my turn. Let's see. This one, there's a lot of things I liked about this one. It still has a little bit of a deviation with the population, but a little bit better than green. I liked, let me see. I think, well, if you go by the school boundaries, I mean, Parkside area is a different school than Birdland. So the Gates is a different school than the sports park. So the Gates probably should be included with Birdland though on this, regardless of which district it goes to. But so I think there should be a little deviations, a little bit of modifications on this one. Those are kind of my comments on, I think, what should be done there. I do like the, I know we're using compactness a lot, that word, but I do like the compactness community of interest that it grabs in general. I thought this was a pretty good one, and a little better on the population differences. But again, I probably a couple of tweaks on this one might be necessary, but overall, I kind of liked it.
Okay, Councilmember Testa?
Well, I liked it in that we had originally said that we wanted to consider school boundaries and that this one was designed to follow school boundaries. I thought was appealing, but it's not one of my favorite maps, so I don't have any other further comments.
Okay. All right. Michael, are you taking notes for the not favorites in case we have a majority for not favorites? We can eliminate it.
I'm trying to do that, and then at the end say what I think I heard the favorites were, and then you can somebody can throw something at me.
Great. That means I don't have to take the notes. Okay. All right. Thank you. And Councilmember Nara?
Thank you. This is not one of my favorites. And I mean, I guess I didn't realize it was drawn on school boundaries, but knowing that the district is going to be looking at redrawing, I think because I don't like the little finger sticking up in District 4 and that little point coming out in District 1, it just, looking at it to the average person, I just don't think it's as clear as some of the others as to what the thinking was and trying to make it fair. So I would put this one near the bottom for me. That would be it. I agree pretty much generally what others have said.
Okay, we had asked for Main Street to be split in some way. This map does not offer that. I think District 3 going and I'm going to be careful the way I say it, but that is such a diverse area for District 3 to go all the way to the east and all the way to the west, which is a lot of different communities of interest for what you're right on the ridge line or the base of Augustine Burnell Park, where you could head up to and all the way out to Ruby Hill. That's a pretty diverse region. But there are some other things I like. I personally liked some separation of hacienda, and this one doesn't, but the little tails or dog legs or those little toppers, as Councilmember Balch mentioned, aren't any clear way, in my opinion, to set districts, because you really have somebody in one area right across the street from another, and it's not a main road, it's just a public street. And they're going, oh, I have a different representative than you do. So I think we can come up with a cleaner map. I guess that's where I'm saying. I agree. Okay, next map, please. And Councilmember Balch has taken his turn. So would anybody like to go first on this map? And this is the purple map.
Sure, I will go.
The silence is dead.
Okay, I'll go. Let me see. Purple. Okay, not a big fan of purple. We're getting more in the, I think, disparities of the population deviations. So that's one thing I didn't like about this one. And you know, Mayor Brown, your point was well taken on that, which this area 3 is very similar to area 3 and the one before. And I think, yeah, you know, any map that has a really from all the way east to all the way west or all the way north, all the way south, to me is a little more problematic as you try to think of communities of interest. I don't think it quite really holds, especially on this one with area 3. I think downtown is, I'm not sure, split. I think it's all in one area, I believe, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is all in one area, which I think is also a downside. Let me see if there's anything else. I think that pretty much does it for me. So yeah, not a favorite of this one at all.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Testa?
Also not a favorite, but I don't have any real problems with it either. I just think that there are some that are better. So I guess the fact that it was done on major roads as dividing lines was a positive, and I don't have any further comments. I think there are better maps.
Okay. Councilmember Narum?
Thank you. I agree. I think there are better choices here. Although I think this maybe is perhaps better than the blue one, but I think we can do better than this one. So that would be my thought.
Okay, thank you. I was looking at the split. I mean, I've got one district up 4.6%, which is significant. You are chopping up this Burnell area map. I just found it was it wasn't my favorite. And as I stated earlier, it's the same problem with 3. You've got some extremely diverse areas in that region. So not a favorite for me either. Councilmember Balch?
Well, geez. Okay. So I actually am okay with it. I will give validity to the comment of the stretch of District 3. I also will mention, maybe Mr. Wagman probably has seen it, the only way to traverse District 3 is Burnell, which is the northern dividing line of District 3. So it does make it awkward. So I'm gonna add levity, support for that observation. But some things that I did like about the map is in the difference between, or where 1, 2, and 3 and 4 meet, that corner, that he is using the arroyo. So he kicks off of West Loss and he starts using the arroyo. And I think that's very appropriate if we're looking for a division on this section of town in the future, or a future map, Mr. Wagman, because we do have houses right on the north side of that, but on the south side of West Las Positas. And so if we use West Las as the dividing alignment road, we kind of form an island of these row of houses where their backyard is to the arroyo, but their front yard is to West Las Positas. And so I think using the arroyo, if we need to, if we're in this general area, is an appropriate use of it. I also like that it picks up the gates and kicks over to Santa Rita. I think that's appropriate. And then I think he's using, or the demographer's using the railroad tracks. No, maybe not in here. Maybe my notes are off. Sorry. Oh, that's more. So he's using more to kick over between 2 and 4 there. The other thing I particularly liked about it was the alignments to the major arterials. The one thing I did not like about it, beyond, as we've mentioned, item 3, is actually at the fair, there's that Rose Avenue homes that's on the backside of the fair, separated by the arroyo. And so as I was trying to think about communities of interest, yeah, so no, not where you're at. Sorry.
Where did you want
okay,
sir?
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. Right where Del Val Parkway kicks in, you can kind of see it right there. Those homes, those lots. Yeah, so I think we're using like Rose Avenue and Pleasanton or something to kick over. Like, yeah, so we're using the backside. So Fair, that's Fair and Rose, I believe. So it's Pleasanton, Fair, and Rose as a divider, which are really small residential streets. So I did have a challenge using Rose, Fair, and Pleasanton Avenue as a divider, because those are not even mid-size neighborhood roads. They're not arterials, and I would prefer to stay on arterials. So not my favorite, but I had some elements I liked. So that concludes that.
Thank you. Michael, the fairgrounds are not city land. And you've drawn out the island there. Yeah, right there off of Vineyard as an area that is not city property. You've drawn out the Merritt property that is not city property. That's that rectangle just to the left of 680. But the fairground hasn't been identified as county property.
So, and your city staff may have to speak to this, but my belief is that they are county property, but are part of the incorporated boundaries of the city of Pleasanton, which is why they're in there. But you have these two areas that are probably county land, but not part of the incorporated city of Pleasanton. So these are following the city incorporation boundaries. And again, staff would know more about that than me.
Okay.
That's my understanding as well. It's county-owned land within the city limits.
Within the city limits. Okay. Not that we have a bunch of students out there, or a bunch of residents that are voting out there, but okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Hopefully you got some feedback, and that was on the purple plan. And Councilmember Testa, would you like to start for the red plan?
The red plan was not a favorite of mine, so I didn't look at it at great detail. So it was low on my list. Again, I think that there are better plans. That's all I have
Okay.
on that one.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Narum?
Thank you. For me to want to put this one forward, I would need to see some changes. As an example, the yellow area just above the Merritt property and west of 680, I mean, that should be part of District 1. That's the Merewood. It's where the high school is. I feel very strongly that leaving it this way would not be appropriate. That would be one thing I would want to see. And then the other piece that I think needs to be looked at is the pink coming way down into downtown. It seems like a very odd split there for downtown. Otherwise, you know, I could live with it, but I would need to see some changes in those two parts to really want to move this to the top or near the top. So that would be my thought.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Balch?
Yeah, so not I didn't actually have a terrible I thought this was an okay plan. It was a good plan, similar to green. I thought we could achieve some things here with it. So I'll just mention stuff I noticed. I liked the alignment of Arroyo Mocho at the top near Stone Ridge instead of following Stone Ridge as he has with 1 and 2. I think that is appropriate based on that great distance of width the Arroyo is. So I thought that was good, and I liked how it kicked back up and then followed Stone Ridge Drive across. So I thought that northern alignment was appropriate. I can see Councilmember Narum's comment about South Muirwood Drive and at the West Las Positas. I can understand that. I know she lives in that area, not I. So, but I mean, North Muirwood Drive and South Muirwood Drive and all of that does seem like a community of interest to me. So, you know, maybe that goes to blue. And then, yeah, the downtown dogleg or whatever we're going to call this, I find that a little clunky. And I say that because District 2 has a 2.5 plus, but District 1 has a 1.7 negative. So if there's a way to rebalance out 2 and 4 just by adjusting that, that might be appropriate. It is interesting that 3 districts do touch at the corner of Sonol, Main 1, right? And that's maybe this is one of the first ones we're seeing like that. So, you know, if we could think about that and how we want to do it. And then it took me a bit to figure out where he was aligning. Sorry, Mr. Wagman was aligning on 2 and 4. And this is the one where it's aligning along the railroad tracks at the south end of the Jensen track. And so once I caught on that that's what he was doing, that made sense to me, actually. I could see that. I know that our residents have thought of that, you know, and that is a pretty significant divider between Jensen track and kind of the downtown. So I think this covered a lot. I liked how it did not divide the Val Vista neighborhood or Del Prado. So, you know, a workable map. Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Arkin?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'm going to agree with a lot of the comments from Councilmember Balch and Councilmember Narum. I think the District One being a little, that the Merritt area needing to be in District One, I think is a good point. As well as that, that little piece of District Two coming down there. I think if we were to consider this one, and this one didn't come to the very, very top of my lists, but again, this kind of fell in the middle for me. I think there would have to be some modifications. The one good thing about this map, I thought that the population deviation was lower than a lot of the other ones, so that was good. But I think this one would have to be modified a bit. So I don't know. I think there are better, but this isn't terrible either. That's what I would say for red. I also just want to make a couple of comments. I know Councilmember Narum mentioned the growth issue with, possibility of, a lot of growth in Area 1 on the west side, and the redrawing of school boundaries. But I don't think we're supposed to use that as criteria, apparently, because actually I thought of those things too, but I know with the growth, we don't know when exactly it's going to happen. Redrawing school boundaries, we don't even know when it'll happen, and those could always change again. So I'm assuming for this census period of this 10 years, for this, we have to use what we have now. Is that correct with the current, is that correct? I mean, can we even take that into consideration, the possibility of increased growth in any one area?
So for purposes of deciding if the districts are of equal size, we have to use the current census data. So what you can do is you can say we want to leave this area a little smaller because we think there's future growth coming in, but you can't go beyond those acceptable deviation limits. And on deviation, one thing I do want to note here, just so folks understand these trade-offs and what you like in a plan and what can break in a plan, is the difference between a 0% deviation and a 5% deviation is about 1,000 people. So you can imagine that's not huge when you talk about some of your neighborhoods. Some of your neighborhoods are well over 1,000 people. And so in trying to push down those deviations, it does create a tension of using those major arterial roads versus trying to drive down those deviations. So it's not a judgment call, but it is a decision point you have where if you get a deviation down, it may mean splitting a little piece of a neighborhood because that's where I got to find a couple of hundred people because that's all we're talking about. So just keep that in mind. It's not put my thumb on the scale, but just 1,000 people isn't a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and my comment on the whole growth thing, I mean, because I did think of that too. Should we be kind of taking that into consideration? But I just think it's so unknown of when growth would actually occur. And it could not occur for many, many years. So that's the one thing I keep thinking of is that's a hard one after I really thought about it of taking into consideration. So, okay, but that's all the comments I have on red.
Okay, I think we started with Julie on this one. So as noted, feels like there's flags of land that doesn't fit. The Muirwood, which is that area to the west of 680, clearly that neighborhood fits in very nicely with the surroundings. So I'm sure they would be considered a community of interest. And the other kind of dogleg or flag is that Del Val to that old Burnell area. If there was any way to make them contiguous with the areas around them, that would make some sense to me. But I think there's better maps. I think there's so much massaging we need to do to this. So let's just see if we have a better map. Okay. All right. We're on to the orange map. And Councilmember Narum, would you like to start with the orange map?
Thank you. So I just want to comment on the growth. The only reason why I bring it up is because on some of these maps, District 1 seems to be lower or, have a little bit negative from the average, and that I'm okay with that. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing given the number of developments planned generally or on the list for that particular area. But yes, I understand that's not a consideration, an absolute consideration. So with regard to the orange plan, this is probably the middle of the pack for me. I like the alignment of between 1 and 2 along the Arroyo and using Las Positas there. It generally uses arterials. The only thing is the Jensen track seems a little bit weird being in District 2 as opposed to District 4 with using Valley Avenue. If you think about Valley Avenue, there's a big sound wall there just on the edge of the Jensen track. And I don't know, that part just seemed a little uncomfortable, I guess. And then the other thing that seems a little odd, and I think we'll see it in another plan, down in District 4, that little knob kind of sticking out at the bottom there with Vineyard or with the Independence and Pleasanton Hills, or I'm not sure exactly what that neighborhood's called, but that looked a little odd to me as well. Is that kind of in the right district or wrong district? I'm not really sure, but I think it's something to consider. But in this one, I'm more concerned about where the Jensen track is, up at the north, or I guess it'd be at the south part of District 2. Otherwise, it's kind of middle of the pack. I'm okay with it. I'm not raving about it, but I'm also not ready to necessarily throw it out like some of the others. So that would generally be where I am.
Council members, so this area highlighted in red is a single census block. I don't know why it's a single census block, so that's why we kind of get blocked in. And I mentioned the census geography is a little weird here. So this area either has to go all in one district or another.
Okay, so that explains that kind of weird knob. That's interesting. Okay, thank you.
I think you're on mute, Carla, or Mayor, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Could you put that orange blob back up? Because part of that is open space and it looks like it's part of Cottager Ranch. And then the other part is Bondi Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are, I don't know how they're different census blocks. They're different developments. See, Bondi and Cottager.
And again, so one thing that I will note for you in just this program, and one place where you may have some limitations, is the census does have a program called the Block Boundary Suggestion Program, where you can go in and suggest to them how they draw this census blocks. They don't have to listen to you. That program, unfortunately, tends to happen in the 6th year. So you didn't know to participate in this program because you had no idea you were going to be doing district elections in 2016. So there may be a few places where you end up with boundaries that you're just like, why are we having to do that? You saw it earlier in one of the other plans where you had that little nubbin, remember, that you didn't like up by the sports park. That's another kind of dumb census block there. So once you settle down on a plan, we'll be able to nail some of those down. But a lot of those places, and for the public listening, you see that it's not a gerrymander. You must be trying to grab somebody's house. It's usually tied to census geography.
Okay. Yeah, we're not trying to grab anyone's house. We're trying to actually smooth the lines. Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Balch, feedback?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, Mayor and Councilmember Norm, because I have the exact same concern about Bondi. I mean, I live in this general area and I found it odd. So when looking at District 4, I just find the shape odd. When I think about driving past one district to get to the other district, and Valley Avenue being a very large thoroughfare arterial in our community, I traverse it quite often. This feels like we've just got a disconnect in 4 primarily. So that's my primary concern. So I think Councilmember Narm mentioned the Arroyo. I had said it earlier. I like that all between 1 and 2 at the top. I think that's all appropriate. again, because of those houses stuck on West Lost where their backyards are up against the arroyo. But when we get down to 2-4 and this little triangular valley hop yard Santa Rita block, that just feels disjoined from the rest of 4. And then when Bondi Ranch comes on, Mission Hills and all of that, with this, that also feels awkward. So, but as we've just seen, does that mean you have to wrap around Burnell a little longer to get it in? That just feels awkward because then you're cutting at Hearst or Cottinger, right? So I'm not sure. I'm having trouble. Middle of the pack for me.
I'm going to jump in. Do you think that Jensen track, which is the pink right there, could be traded? I know it may not be an exact number for that flag or key triangular shape that's green on District 4, that Del Val. And if those two were sort of traded, would they be able to? The areas he's highlighting could be 2, and 4 would be that Jensen track off above Stanley Boulevard, above the railroad tracks. Just an idea.
So yes, that's the kind of, if we had a plan that, you like, but that would be a direction.
Mhm.
I don't know that we've hitched the point that this is a plan you like, but that would be the kind of direction on any refined maps once we get down to anything that you like. So this area, unfortunately, is about 3,500 people, and then this area is only about 1,000. So it would have to go, if you're to take this out under this, you would have to go further north to balance those populations out. You probably have to get up to probably, it looks like about that far, which is
That's significant because that's,
yeah, you're getting up to Rosewood basically, and Heritage Park and Ironwood. So that would be, Pleasant Valley is pretty large.
Yeah, but that's reasonable. I mean, it would be worth discussing. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for doing that. Councilmember Arkin?
Yeah, thank you. I actually really liked this one. This was one of my top ones. I liked a lot of things about it. Population, the communities of interest. But Mayor Brown and actually Councilmember Balch, you mentioned that area, that does seem like that might need tweaked a little bit, would probably work better, what we just discussed. And I think, I know Area 4 right now is the one with the highest population, but just by a tad. So I don't know if there is a way to tweak that amongst, 2, 3, and 4, somehow tweak that a little bit. I think if we did that, this would probably be close to me, as perfect as we could get. So that would be my only kind of comment on that one, because I think it checks the boxes of a lot of the criteria listed. So that's all I have on that.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Testa?
I had also liked it. Hadn't picked up the concerns that were shared, but if they could be modified, I do think this one is a good possibility.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Nara? Oh, we started with you.
I started.
All right. So I'll just wrap up that I like, it's almost a fair quadrant. It's not quite as simple as the first map, but I see even here's yellow, here's green, here's purple, and here's pink. If we can balance that out. And to Mr. Wagaman's point, though, we started with District 4 being 4% larger than the others. So hopefully there would be some way to balance that that flag lot off, that large green area, doing a trade, keeping 2 a nice clean shape, keeping 4 clean shape, 3 and 1 as well. And I think they're also, if you get rid of that Del Val area out of District 4, you help with the compactness, and those communities of interest should help solidify, because they're not quite so distributed from all the way at one end of Valley Avenue and Hop Yard all the way to the other side of Ruby Hill. So I think this has got some potential as well, if it can be, if the numbers can work out and follow those natural breaks for roads and neighborhoods and community of interest and arroyos. Thank you. All right. we are on to the yellow plan. You're back up, Jack. Would you have any plans for the yellow plan? Sorry, Councilmember Balch.
Yeah, so I mean, as we've evolved our conversation, I'll maybe evolve my comments. So I'm still not, I can't get on board with the split of hacienda along the school grounds. I can't explain to someone what district you're in between 1 and 2 in any short sentence. So I don't think voters will understand it. I don't barely understand it. And not everyone has a kid that's getting pulled into a district. So I just really have a challenge with 1-2's dividing line. Still aligning to the canals now at, I think that is still at Del Prado and Val Vista. Excuse me, Del Prado and yeah. And then we go to Valley. So I'm along a major arterial, but I do have challenges with 4 again. The green little anvil head or hat and the Main Street steps look a little funky. So I don't feel like it's very compact. I just feel like we're not accomplishing as well as Green had with so clear lines. So again, 1 to 2's border is a challenge, 2 to 4's border is a challenge, and 4 to 3's border is a challenge. So what do I like about this map?
And 1 to 3, you've got that weird little foothill purple box.
Yeah, but at least it's on the, my only comment about, and I do worry and I see it, but I also know if and you know, we've made good comments, all of us, Councilmember Arkin like, about growth, right? The Merritt property is that square, right? So is the southern part all the way down to Burnell all connected up with above? I could see that. I can see that argument, even though Merritt itself is not yet online or developed. That doesn't bother me as so much as the hacienda split between 1 and 2 and the hat, I'll call it the hat on 4, because yeah, that's just awkward. And the step from downtown, I don't think downtown would appreciate that step out like that. So there's my general comments towards the bottom.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Arkin?
Yeah, I would agree. This isn't a favorite either, for kind of the same reasons. I kind of think it looks, I hate using the term, but it looks a little gerrymandered type of thing. And it just isn't, just showing this to somebody in the public about where that split, like between 1 and 2, I saw right away. To me, that's kind of problematic. So it's not as compact as I would like. I would say on 1 with that little sliver, I do think Mr. Wagaman said that is considered compactness. So I think we're okay with that. But yeah, I just think, and I agree with Councilmember Balch on the little hat with the District 4. Yeah, it seems a little out of place and just not as compact as we would like. And yeah, not a favorite.
Okay, all right. Councilmember Testa?
Well, in the interest of time, I'll add it's not a favorite of mine. So I think we're heading in that direction. I won't spend any more time on it.
Thank you. Naram? Councilmember Naram?
Yeah, this would be my least favorite of the 6 for many of the reasons stated. I will comment that purple box there in District 1 is actually a couple of neighborhoods that just continue on down Foothills. So I think people would think that was reasonable, you know, and it shuts off or cuts off at Burnell, Foothill and Burnell. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, doesn't make this a positive for me or a huge favorite for me for all the other reasons that have been stated. So like I said, my least favorite of the 6 of them.
Okay, I joined the group. Let's eliminate the yellow map. Okay, we're on to the public contributed map. I have next Combs, if that's all right. And Councilmember Arkin, you picked this as a map you liked. Do you have it? Would you like to explain?
Yeah, you know what? I have the Austin plan next. Are we?
Oh, we didn't pick that as one to talk about.
Oh, okay. We're not going with all of it. We're just going with Combs. Okay.
It was a great map too. It's yes, difficult to do this.
And I too would like to thank all the members of the public for drawing the maps. I know that takes time and effort, and being interested in this, I think is great for the members that did, public members that did submit one. So thank you for your efforts on all of this. And I think with Combs, I think it's, again, it checked a lot of boxes for me. It's pretty compact for the most part. What else did I like about it? The population deviation is pretty low on this one, I think. So from the top to the bottom. So I really like that about it. The downtown Main Street, I think, is split in a way that makes sense. I think it follows a lot of community of interest. The only comment I would have on this one that I'm just not sure, and maybe Mr. Wagaman can explain, on District 4, the little dog ear at the very top, the pointy dog ear, or
I would have to look at what I was doing there. It looks, well, you look at what I'm doing. Oh, I didn't draw this plan. I apologize. So I don't know what I was doing there because I
Okay.
didn't draw it.
No,
So I can't speak to the intent there.
Okay, the only question I have is that little dog ear at the top, for lack of a better, yeah, is that splitting any neighborhood? I can't
It
tell.
appears to be splitting the Willow West neighborhood. It's 28 people in that area. So if that was we like that plan, but we want to move that, it wouldn't significantly change anything.
Okay, it might just make sense and look a little more compact if that one, yeah, wait, that's between 2 and 4. Yeah, and actually 2 has less population than 4. So I would probably add that minor tweak to it if that follows, if that looks like a more community of interest with 2, I would perhaps suggest that. But that really is the only modification on this one. I think this one is one of my very top ones. I think this was a good one.
All right, Councilmember Testa, you also picked it as a map you preferred.
I did, and I think that one little modification is a good one. It takes one of the lower ones and takes some of the numbers out of the higher one, so that works. I found it interesting, given that little piece down at the bottom of 4 was a curiosity to most of us that came out of an unusual census tract. I found that interesting that a community member also included that, but if that works, that's fine. I did like this one. That's all.
Okay, Councilmember Narum.
Yeah, I like this, but I didn't realize until the speaker pointed out that this does split the Del Prado neighborhood, which I think is a community of interest. And so given that, and given our intent to really try to keep neighborhoods together and that we have other plans, this would probably fall down for me a bit, unless there was a way to adjust that and make that neighborhood whole. That'd be my thought.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. There is no goal to split a neighborhood, that's for certain. Councilmember Balch.
Yeah, Mr. Wagman, could you zoom in a little bit closer on the Del Prado neighborhood there? I caught that when looking at it, and obviously we heard the speaker. I lived in the Del Prado neighborhood before my current home. I know it's a community of interest. It's a precinct in our voting. I walked the whole thing. It took me 10.8 miles. I nearly killed myself. So I would say if we could solve that problem with the Del Prado split, the dog ear, and I apologize, Mr. Wagman, if you could zoom back out a little bit. But I also have a slight challenge with the Hacienda splits, and maybe he can look at addressing this further as he's massaging this further. Yeah, right there. If you don't mind zooming into that, Mr. Wagman. So I have a challenge that we're following Stone Ridge, then we jump to West Las Positas, and then we come back down on Santa Rita. So this whole like dog ear here, to grab that, to put it into 2, I almost think we should either get on the Arroyo here, stay on Stone Ridge, or something else. It's also hard that these 3 districts touch in this general area or are so close. But if we address, as Councilmember Arkin said, getting that point off or out, I think we should try to see, I don't know how many people are in this area, the census block of pink to blue here, but I think it'd be better for us to stay on the main arterial as much as we could, I guess is what I would say. So if that block could go to 1 and we use Stone Ridge all the way across, I think that we would do better for that. And then I notice obviously it gets onto Arroyo Mocho after that, which makes sense to me, right? Because that's a major division. But this block he's highlighted, I think needs to kick to 1. 1's got a negative deviation anyways. So if we could get that to 1, address Del Prado, so we are not splitting Del Prado, and then this little dog's ear, very politely put, maybe this could come around.
To note, that area highlighted is almost 1,600 people, so it doesn't look like a lot, but it's a relatively high density area. But I hear the direction on what you would like to explore.
Yeah. I try to think for myself how I would tell someone what district they're in. So I'm telling the person on one side of West Las Positas, okay, where are you on West Las Positas, right? West Las Positas becomes a directional sign here for a district. Whereas if we use Stone Ridge the whole way, it simplifies for a voter. So that's where I would like to go.
I would actually
Thank you.
agree with those points that Councilmember Balch just said. If there's a way to tweak those few things, I think this could be a really good one, but that it does make sense with and I did not realize it split Del Prado. So I appreciate you pointing that out. But I think with a few minor tweaks on this one can be a really good one.
Yeah, I will mention while I've got the floor, I really dislike this little thing we've already discovered down here with Bondi Ranch. No one's fault, no one's issue. It's just, wow, right? Just wow. So.
Yeah, that little cauliflower ear. Coming
that
with all
we'll
kinds
call
of
it that.
descriptive words.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems out of place. So if we can cure the area between 1 and 2, and even following Stone Ridge, because Stone Ridge usually you don't have housing developments on both sides of Stone Ridge, and then get rid of that witch's hat pointed shark fin piece on number 4. Do a little shifting there.
Del Prado, then, sorry.
Then let's go to Del Prado, over on left to Del Prado. Those are both Valley Trails and Del Prado in that rid area. Would you mind zooming in, Mr. Wagaman, there?
To which area?
Where it was Del Prado and Valley Trails.
You're going to have to help me. I've
Okay,
lost track of the things.
It's where
there.
the 680, 680s
Oh,
are
this
close
area?
together.
Okay.
Yeah,
There.
look at that. So it's just to that flesh colored piece there. Yeah, that golden tan piece. That's the area that we're trying.
And again, these are relatively large areas, right? So that's 2,200 people. So that's
So we'll
about
have
12% of a district. So
we're gonna have to trade.
if this is losing 12, so for example, and this is what we'll work through, you can imagine how this ripple goes, right? So if you're moving 2,000 people here, and then you also are taking out, for example, those 3,600 people there, you've taken about 20% of a district out of 2. And suddenly 2 is going to start not looking like what you liked about 2 to begin with. So something I can work with, but it'll be some challenges.
Could you pick up how many people are in Danbury Park, Heritage Valley, Rosewood, and Ironwood?
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be the trade-off would be if you added this, took this away, this would be the area I would move into 2. And then 4, though, would need to pick something up either in downtown or down in this Mission Park, Mission Hill area.
Right.
So
Mission Hill, Mission Park could be some of that Sycamore.
Right. So that would be the rotation you would see in potentially addressing that issue.
Okay. All right. Well, gosh, you have a tough job.
You still wanted to look at the CATS plan, and then I'm going to have to get a little clarification here in order to be able to implement. We did this a little differently than I normally do, but that's okay. We've gotten some great direction, is there any feedback on the CATS plan, or did you want to?
Yeah, before we go to CATS, I didn't mean to wrap up. I just meant for Combs. I hear a lot of positive, good ideas about this, contiguous regions, communities of interest that are similar. There's just these flags that if it can be brought back in and balanced out, even at the very end where the words are El Charo Road vertically, there is a neighborhood at the very end of, and it is called California Somerset. So there's Pleasanton Meadows for a long time, but that could be tacked on to where it says Stonebridge Park and those two areas, just to kind of combine something, just an idea. I don't know if anybody else wants to add on that before we go to the last map.
I'll let Mr. Wagman do his magic, but I think you were onto something with Ironwood, frankly, Mayor. I thought that if we were, again, the goal is to keep Del Prado whole, I think is what I was trying to do, plus the Stone Ridge alignment for that one community there. So Heritage Valley, Rosewood, Ironwood, if those go into 2 off of 4 is already a plus on the, a plus 2.4 on the deviation on population. So, you know, it might be there.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Hands up? I don't see any. Okay. All right. Let's go on to the last map that the council asked, and then that is the CATS plan, KATZ. Thank you, resident CATS. Lost my order. I think we're on to Councilmember Testa. If you had something on this map that stood out as a strength for you.
I did. I liked it. It wasn't very tip top of my favorites, but I thought it had some nice, well, I really don't remember what it was that stood out about this one, because it was kind of mid-range for me, but yeah, I'm not going to comment on it. Thanks.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Narum, any thoughts?
Yeah, a couple. It looks to me like it maybe splits the Gates neighborhood between 3 and 4 there. And if that's the case, you know, that I think is a bit of a concern. And then it drops down in District 3, it looks like is using Del Valle Parkway, which would seem like a bit of a residential street, and you've got houses on both sides, so you're kind of splitting in a neighborhood. That, you know, is a bit of a concern as well. And then as you drop down to between 1 and 2, it also looks like, you know, there's some residential streets there that are getting used as opposed to, you know, a main street, Bernal or something. Mm-hmm. So as we've worked through these, there's some things about this I really like, but I also think, you know, there would need to be some tweaking done here to make sure we're not separating or dividing neighborhoods and not necessarily running lines down residential streets like Del Valle. So those would be my thoughts.
Those are good thoughts. What is that street where right by the number 1, Michael?
I think that's Hearst. Oh, sorry.
Vineyard or Hearst?
Let me see here. Hold on.
Pretty sure it's not Bernal.
That's Arbor.
Arbor. Oh no, that's the middle of a neighborhood. Okay.
I have a challenge with that. You know, going down the middle of a neighborhood.
I do too.
So again, this is that exact same dumb block.
Oh.
It's basically the inverse of the cauliflower ear, I think I heard it called. It's if you don't want to do the cauliflower ear that way, then it comes around the other way. So this is where I mentioned earlier, just the census geography is not helpful.
Well, in that light, then I think I would prefer the cauliflower ear.
Yeah, so a lower population, it's easier to align to the rest than the middle of Arbor. Good points. Good points. Councilmember Balch?
Yeah, so I think when I got to this one, I still prefer the green. I'll tell you, green's starting to look pretty nice with the quadrants. So to me, this one is the invert of the orange almost. The orange one had the 4, that we'll call it the lower west quadrant, with the triangle into town at Valley and Hop Yard. And this has got 3 with its triangle into town the other way, right? So it's exactly, what do you do with the area south of Valley, north of Hop Yard? So if you go back and look, orange went up from Ruby, and this one comes down from the mall. Are you going to flip over to that, Mr.
Oh,
Wagner?
the orange. Yeah, I can overlay the orange plan.
Oh,
Or so you can see where it's coming the other way.
yeah. So see how orange came this way? I think that was pretty high for Miss Arkin and Testa. And then this one's just doing the opposite, in my opinion. It's just coming down the other way, coming down from the top. There's some elements I like. I'll just maybe mention. I do like that it's using the canal between Valley Trails and Del Prado, kind of like what we just directed on the prior plan, the Combs plan. I'm not quite sure about what we're using at the north of Hacienda and 3. I think we're using West Las Positas, which I've been pretty significantly opposed to, versus the Arroyo. So I'd want to see about if we were using this to do that. I still like maybe I like it because Santa Rita is still a major arterial. Yeah, see, so that block he's just done, Santa Rita. And I really do have a challenge with what we're going to do between 1 and 2 if we're going to go using Burnell like this. That's why the plans that went where you used Snow Boulevard to go all the way down and take all the east side seemed to address this cauliflower problem that we've identified, because this neighborhood is a neighborhood. Yeah, I don't have much more because there's a few things. It does achieve one of the higher CVAPs for Asian, but not a factor we're per se taking into plan, right? But definitely splitting the Cottinger neighborhood or Arbor and all of that.
Yeah, the Vintage Hills neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Good points. Valerie Arkin, Councilmember Arkin, Vice Mayor Arkin.
Yeah, kind of similar comments. It wasn't at the bottom of my list, not at the top either. But I did also think the gates might have been split. I noticed that as well. And I wasn't sure with some of the other neighborhoods. And now that pointed out that neighborhood split, that's concerning if it is splitting up neighborhoods. That would be something that I'm sure, we don't want to do. So that's kind of the downside to this one. I think, I again agree with some of the other comments in that regard. So I don't need to say much more. So not one of my favorites. I think we can do better, I think, with some of the other ones. So.
Okay. Councilmember Testa.
I think I started on this one.
Okay. All right, then I'll wrap
So,
up.
and I had recommended it, but absolutely looking at it through different eyes now, and I share the concerns that have been brought up. So yeah.
All right. There's even a strange little right off West Las Positas, a nice little point in there, right around the Parkside area. Anyway, so it just goes to show how difficult this job really is. We have a really good college try by a resident. And once you break it down, it's so difficult to not split neighborhoods. So we'll leave it to the professionals. I think this map is going to have to drop off. And do you have what you need from us, Mr.
So
Wagner?
I'm going to try to summarize again. I want to emphasize even the direction on plans that didn't elevate to the top, I will still look at because it may be applicable to what you liked or didn't like in plan X may still give me direction. So this was a helpful exercise. The plans that I heard the most positive feedback on, and it was not uniform. So different people, I want to make sure everybody's voice is being reflected here. Even if it's not your particular voice, was I heard several people elevating the green plan as something that was worth pursuing. There were some refinements in several areas. that I would need to look at, but a couple people had that near the top of their list. Several people had the orange plan near the top of their list. Again, some refinements to look at, some particularly around this area, but I would look at those. And then the Combs plan, again, looking at what refinements are possible around the Del Prado neighborhood. And those were the three plans that I would probably develop a alternative refined version of those three plans for the next meeting. On the deviations, and again, if there's counter direction, I'm going to focus right now on that primary goal, which is to keep those, or not the primary goal, focus on that prior direction, which is trying to keep those neighborhoods whole and get there. And then if, when you get to that, so you may still see deviations that are a little on the higher end. And then if you do decide to go through that live line drawing process, once you've nailed down a plan, you'd be able to see exactly what you're doing in order to drive those deviations down, what neighborhoods in essence might have to be split to get that deviation a little bit lower. So I'm not arbitrarily making those decisions because we haven't gotten a lot of feedback on if you had to split neighborhood X, this is where you would do it. So that's the way I would implement this discussion. If I didn't catch anybody's direction or you're not going to get what you need based on that, please raise your hand and see somebody raising their hand.
Yes, Councilmember Balch.
Oh, sorry, I did it real life, Norm, not virtual. IRL, as my son says. So the red plan, I did think had some support, and maybe I just see if there was, and I apologize, Mayor, because we talked about just some minor tweaks to it that might make this one actually a star. I think we're looking at that yellow box up by South Muirwood Drive, correct, and the pink dog leg in, right, because of the deviations on the side. So I'd like to see if there could be a refinement of this plan with those two things. And I'll just point out, as we talked about the cauliflower, when we align on Snow Boulevard and Main Street, we don't even address Bondi Ranch and having to either put it in with Ruby or Bondi Ranch and putting it in with Mission Hills. So I particularly like the Snow Boulevard. And so if red can be refined, I would like to lend my support to that cause.
And I should have added there, the red plan, the reason I didn't mention it is, if you think about, if you look at the Combs plan or the red plan and the rotation you described on the red plan and the rotation you just described on the Combs plan, you can see how they kind of might meet in the middle as far as what's going to happen in that three-way rotation between those districts. So it may become kind of a blend of those two plans. I don't know, but that's a fair point.
You have better eyes than I do at this hour, so thank you very much.
Okay, any Councilmember Narum?
Yeah, thank you. I just, I wanted to also raise the inclusion of the red plan. I thought that we did have some interest in it with a couple of those potential changes. So I would like to see that one go forward too. And it may be a blend between the red and the Combs that, rises, comes up to the top. So sounds like he got it. So I'm good.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna, seeing no other comments, I'm gonna just make sure I go back in that Combs plan, if you don't mind, Michael. When we had talked about kind of smoothing out the areas, you had mentioned that Del Prado area, which is to the left, but we had also mentioned that shark fin area to the right. And that, could you do an overlay with neighborhoods on this plan? Is that possible?
Hold on one moment.
Right. See, that Willow West seems to be.
So there's 28 people in that. So
Yeah,
that's an easy fix.
But to trade for that Del Prado, that portion of the Del Prado up to Valley Trails, we'll have to obtain that Rosewood, Heritage Valley, or Danbury Park, or Ironwood, or some portion of those So to figure out a balance. You had just mentioned Del Prado. I wanted to make sure that the shark fin area was included as well.
So again, and when everyone's a little less tired, and I know I'm kind of my own head, this District 1, if again is District 1 keeps that basic shape to it, which you see in both red and in the Combs plan. The red plan goes a little maybe further north than you want, and this plan maybe goes a little further south, and you can see how if District 3 is gobbling up Del Prado, District 2 is gobbling up towards Ironwood, and District 4 is gobbling up down towards Mission Park. Those three things kind of gobbling together, this plan starts looking a lot like the red plan pretty quick, particularly with some of the direction you gave on keeping downtowns split and not having downtown going north as in the red plan. So I know you all don't see it, but I can see the direction you're giving in both of those plans.
Well, I see Mission Hills, Mission Park, Lund Ranch, and even Bondi Ranch have many things in common. North Sycamore is a little bit more detached because you have to gain access to it from Sunol, but the others, traffic flows amongst those four neighborhoods very easily. So I think of them as kind of a community of interest. You don't have to go to a main arterial road to gain access like you do for the North Sycamore development. So I guess I see Mission Hill, Mission Park, and Lund Ranch and Bondi being pretty compact. And there is no main road splitting them like there is between Mission Hills and Old Town. That's a valley. I mean, that's Burnell Avenue, sort of the main road. So I guess that's my 2 cents worth. Okay. Any other last comments before we adjourn our meeting? City staff, Dan, any wrap-up comments you'd like to offer?
I think we're good. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Those of you that are at home watching on YouTube or on TV 30, thank you. Thank you, council members. Really good discussion and a very difficult job, as many of our residents learned by trying to divvy up into quadrants, balanced that they are in the city of Pleasanton without splitting up neighborhoods. So with that, I am going to adjourn our meeting, and we will have a follow-up meeting on this. Dan, do you have that date in top of your mind, or Michael, when our final meeting is on this districting?
I believe it is go ahead, Michael, 24th, I believe, right?
So we have February 24th to select a plan as the target goal.
Okay, February 24th it is. Yeah, Mr. Balch, Councilmember Balch.
And sorry, and when will we post? Because the public has been asking me when they could see the revised plan. So I apologize. Do you have an idea when that is? 7 days before, as I recall, right?
The goal is no later than 7 days before. I'm going to try to get them done earlier. It's obviously a relatively short trade around, and you've given me a lot to work with, but this is what at least 7 days before. Likely, we're going to try to get it before that.
We call that an opportunity to shine, Mr. Wagman. Opportunity.
I need more speed.
Have some coffee and we will see you in a few days. Okay, thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned. Good night.